Can death be hacked? When the body is still strong, what is meant to be can always be transcended. Cheating death. The idea that death is a catastrophe that should be avoided at all costs has somehow set forth this quest to do all kinds of ridiculous kinds of things in the hope that we can cheat death or save someone from the jaws of death. People's imaginations have been fired on this, in part because of many colorful tales from lore. These stories have created a lot of hope in people that death can probably be cheated. To some extent, this is also fueled by the science fiction of stellar travel, where they put the body into some sort of a deep freeze or sleep mode and then wake up in another era altogether. But fundamentally, by doing certain things, you can postpone it, but you cannot cheat death. You cannot avoid death. In India, there is a belief that if someone is on the deathbed, then you should chant the Mahamrityunjaya mantra or perform the Mrityunjaya Homa, which will avert death. Mrityu means death, Jaya means victory. So, the mantra and the Homa are supposed to grant you victory over death. However, people have been doing the Mrityunjaya Homa for thousands of years, but no one has survived through all those years. No one won Mrityu. It is a silly understanding that winning over Mrityu is to live forever physically. No one has succeeded in that till now, but one who is beyond the body has won over death. I am not trying to dismiss the ritual completely, but how it is done, by whom it is done, and how many have actually benefited from it is questionable. Definitely, to some extent, something could have happened. Certain situations may have been averted. There is no question about that. But we should not interpret Jaya as victory. Mrityunjaya can mean that you have transcended the fear of death. If you transcend the fear of death, in a way, death does not matter. I have not looked at the ritual in detail, but in my understanding, probably in ancient times, they performed this to give one freedom from the fear of death. Somewhere along the way, advertisements and the commercial aspects of it took over, and they started saying, "You will never die if you do this." About 15 years ago, something like this came our way. A person in Coimbatore took his own horoscope to an astrologer for some purpose. Looking at the horoscope, the astrologer was taken aback and said, "This person is already dead. Why did you bring this to me?" The person was very disturbed by this, so he consulted a few more astrologers. They all said the same thing. The person whose horoscope this was supposed to be was dead. Finally, someone brought him to us. Looking at this person's energies, I pointed out the places in the Dhyanalinga where he would sit to strengthen those aspects of his energy system. He did that and went home. This is one of those rare horoscopes where someone clearly foresaw that he would die at this time, but due to his karma in this life or his sadhana or the way he lived his life or whatever, he had gone beyond that foreseen time of death. In some ways, he was a dead man alive. So I said, "Anyway, you crossed one line, let us cross one more," and asked him to sit in different places in the Dhyanalinga which we had marked for him. Without asking questions, he went and sat there. If he is alive and well today, it is his doing. Recently, I came to know he is still alive and fine, and he has no clue as to how he survived. Now, this became a big thing, and people started asking, is it possible to avoid death by sitting in the Dhyanalinga? See, people die due to different reasons, and I am not talking about medical reasons. Let us say two people are dying of the same illness, perhaps renal failure, but energy wise, they need not be dying of the same cause. They may be dying of two different energy causes. The energy may be exiting in two different ways. Accomplished yogis sometimes do certain things to avoid what would otherwise have been a moment of death for them. They do this by slowing down everything in the system and entering into samadhi states. They say this happened in the life of the Indian saint Shirdi Sai Baba. He was suffering from severe asthma, and one day he suffered a severe attack when it felt like he was going to die. So he decided to rid himself of the ailment entirely by going into samadhi. He told his disciples that there would be no sign of life in his body for some time, and they should protect it for 3 days. If after 3 days there was no sign of him returning, then they should bury the body in a particular spot. That night he went into samadhi. Both his breathing and his pulse stopped. The next day the villagers came and, being concerned that he was dead, wanted to at least properly bury him in the spot he had indicated. Fortunately, one of Sai Baba's disciples did not budge and prevented them from doing so, placing his master's body on his lap all the while. Finally, after 3 days, Baba showed signs of life and became normal again. He lived for 32 years after that because he managed to avert death at the appointed time by going into samadhi and recharging his pranic system. In samadhi states, your sense of time is lost because it is only measured by the progress and the cycles of the physical. Let us say you are sitting in an air conditioned hall which is uniformly lit from morning to evening. The only reason you will know time is because of the weariness of the body. As the day progresses, your body keeps time. Every 3 or 4 hours, it will tell you that you have to go to the bathroom. It will tell you that you are thirsty. It will tell you that you are hungry. This is the only way you will know time. Without the cycles of the body, you don't know time. So if you slow down the cycles of the body by going into samadhi, you may lose the sense of time, and then in your experience there is no time. So what is 10 years to other people may get reduced to 1 year because you made your cycles 10 times slower. So for the clock outside, you cheated it, but you did not cheat time because time is not in the clock. The clock is like your bladder. It keeps a count of things inside of you. It is not that the clock is generating time. Time is a completely different dimension altogether. Only because of the physical cycles, because the earth spins, because the planet revolves around the sun, you are keeping time with those physical manifestations or physical expressions. But actually, if there were no planets, there would still be time. Time is the platform for creation to exist. Without it, creation would not exist. Now, if you slow down your metabolism, if you as much as breathe few numbers of time in a minute, you will live longer. You will not be deceiving time. It is just that you slow down the body and stretch that time. If you distance yourself from the body, you deceive time. Samadhi works like that. But if you deep freeze the body, you will grow through life without experiencing it. Let us say you deep froze the body for 100 years and then woke up. You will not gain any life because you did not live for those 100 years. If you were living for these 100 years, it means something. You did not exist, but you just popped up after 100 years. It is like a prisoner who served 20 years in jail and then came out. There is no real gain in that. When it is so easy to reproduce and have a new body, why do you want to preserve the old body? What is the point? This is all an Egyptian dream. You should see how those mummies are now, all dried rubbish. Now, there are some other specific situations or programs where we tell people, don't worry, for the next few days or weeks, we will ensure that you will not die. Once it so happened that I was in the middle of program and they brought in a brahmachari who had been bitten by a snake. I said he will not die just because a reptile bit him. That much life we have taken into our hands, and he survived. There have been some other situations like this. So over time, some people started asking, Sadhguru, can you cheat death? We are not cheating death. We are only making sure life happens. That is all. Right now, to stabilize my own system, I am using certain help from outside to do that in a certain way. Similarly, in the advanced spiritual programs at Isha, I act like a pig for everything else because everything else is connected to me at that moment. This is why we are so horribly finicky about every small thing during the programs. We are finicky about where people sit, where they stand, when they come in, when they go out, and all that. If they get up for as much as going to bathroom, we don't let them, because if we don't maintain the tightness of the atmosphere, we will not be able to peg that hold and supports. We want everything to happen in a certain way, because once the situation becomes loose, then managing it becomes almost impossible. When everyone is focused in one direction, it is easy to do what we have to do with them. When we did not have the necessary infrastructures and conducted these programs in external premises, many big lumps of the size of lemons used to form on my spine. It used to stay for 2 or 3 days because that is the kind of strain the body was taking. Now that we have our own constructed places, at least one aspect of it is handled. It is so much easier to do these programs in a place which is dedicated to it rather than doing it in a place where every day something new is happening. Now, taking someone else's life and death into our hands is very much a possibility. If you look at it that way, you can say each life has its own trajectory as to when it is born, how it lives, what it undergoes, how it dies, and so on. The essence of the spiritual process is getting them all into one trajectory, not with everyone going by their own trajectory. Especially in a program, the basic thing is to get everyone into the same trajectory. If you have all of them focused in such a way that at that moment their lives become one trajectory, then it is easier to hold them. It is easier to ensure that life happens in a certain way for them. This is what we ensure in the programs. If they are all flying in their own trajectories, you cannot be holding 500 people together. You cannot ensure these things. This is not foolproof, but it is foolproof enough to take a chance. It is not absolute, but it is 99.9% absolute. The rest depends on managing the situation. It is not just this, a lot more is being done. It is just that it will look like too much mumbo jumbo if I talk about it. Almost every day, at least a dozen photographs of people who are on their deathbed come to me. People want to know whether they will die or not, or if something can be done for their recovery, whether it is the right time for them, or if something can be done for them. It is dealt with without making too much drama about it. You could create a lot of drama about it and become like a Superman, but I want to be able to go out and play golf anonymously. So it is better to be like that, like this. In an earlier section, I narrated how one of our teachers went to the Himalayas and died. So if it is possible to avert or postpone death in some cases, could his death have been avoided? If you attempt such interventions, there are many things you will have to do. In today's world, due to various cultural and attitudinal situations, people are not available to you in that dimension. Maybe people who are at the yoga center are available to some extent and you could do something with them. But even if they are not fully available, the worst part of this modern life is everything has to be explained. Life does not work like that. Tell me, how are you alive with all your science? Explain to me what is keeping you alive right now. I will show you how many holes there are in your explanation. Since you have to explain everything, there are so many things you cannot do with people. They will put everything under their limited logical lens and come to their own conclusions. You can intervene in some way only with a few people, the rest you cannot touch, because without a logical explanation, you cannot do anything. This is the nature of life today. Just telling them don't go would not have worked. So, was it meant to be? Not necessarily. When the body is still strong, what is meant to be can always be transcended. Maybe I would have asked him to go on a long sadhana, but he would not have complied just because I asked him to. If I had told him to go into silence for 45 days, he would have thought that he was being punished, and maybe he would have slipped out of the back door, and death could have happened in many other ways. In today's world, you cannot tell someone, just do this. You have to explain it to them. But it is not possible to explain these things because, for one, it may not be logical. Secondly, it is not so black and white. Even in your own perception, it is not like it is 100% certain that this person is going to die. It looks like they will die. There are certain indications which say death is close. So I think they may die, but they may not die. You see a gray area, you see danger, and you step back. That is about it. You cannot say this is it. It is definitely going to happen. There are some cases where you can say that, but those cases are rare. Life is not like that. There is a twilight zone always. Now, why would a guru or someone who is capable of intervene at all? If there are spiritual reasons, we will intervene, or in some moments of compassion, we may intervene. But it is not good to intervene all the time because, after all, you are not avoiding death, you are only postponing it. When you do that, what comes next may not be as good as what has come now. So, you need not always intervene. But today, 21st century morality is such that they will say you could have intervened, but you did not. That amounts to murder. 21st century people think they are all eternal people. They are not going to die. Till you print their obituary, they are not dead. People are in that state of denial about their mortality.